I want to preface my talk today with the challenges that I have in these times to speak to people. Because I'm a rabbi, I'm an Israeli, I'm Jewish. Of course I'll be on the Israel side. I'll be where my family is. My family was attacked. The consequences, of course, are horrible, and we all acknowledge that. But I'm going to have to speak as myself today. You can agree or disagree, or we can continue the conversation later. But I see both sides. It's not that I see only my side, but I live in my side. I can't live in both sides. I live, it's not that I can't live in different places as I have lived in my own life, but the concepts that are embodied by the two sides, I'm on that side. And I'll explain also through Heschel, through Rabbi Abram Joshua Heschel, whom I love very much, and he inspired me very much, and I know today is the film about him. So he was my example of how to be a rabbi. I met Rabbi Heschel. We overlapped for 4 months. He died in December of 72. I was born in August 72. So we at least overlapped in this world for a little bit. But when I came to the Jewish Theological Seminary, it was the first time I really was exposed to his writing. I came from the Orthodox University, the Yeshiva University, and we didn't really delve into his writings too much for some reason. But what I loved about Heschel, and this will bring me into my conversation here, is that he was an activist. And when he marched with Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King in the Selma to Alabama, he locked hands with him and said, I felt that my legs were praying, my feet. I was praying with my feet. And really, that's the bottom line. We can't leave all our teachings to the study hall or to the sanctuary. The whole point of learning is then to do something with it. And that brings me to my mission to Israel. When I said I was going to Israel, by the way, I was not planning on going this time. We lead, as you know, groups every year, but it was in February, so I wasn't going to Israel now. I was actually going to go back to Alaska, that I fell in love in August, but the need called, and I was going to go to Israel. And everybody was, in one sense, understanding that I need and want to go to Israel, but of course they were fearful, and for me and for the situation. And I said, you know what? It's not even. There's an expression in Hebrew, lo shayach. It doesn't even come into the calculations. Fear. Because you know you have to do something. So I was on a mission with 24 other rabbis, conservative rabbis from mainly North America, mainly from the United States. But we met with our colleagues in Israel, the conservative movement in Israel, and we tried to do a few things. And this is where the challenge of even the name that I chose for this, I'll go from the end of the title I gave to this presentation, in troubled times. Everybody agrees with the troubled times, I don't need to explain that, right? Good. Mission to the Holy Land. It's the Holy Land. I don't call it Israel only because of course I see it as Israel as well, but I think the Holy Land expands the definition of what this piece of land is supposed to mean for us. And when you say Holy Land, you include everybody that this land is holy to them. And for me, of course, I'm a person that had been doing this for 18 years now. And what I wanted to do through the interfaith work was to prevent a situation like this. And if you, I'm happy another time to present our peace proposal, the religious peace proposal that we presented here and in Israel, in Jerusalem several times, because we said, the bottom line, what people don't understand here, is that this is a religious war. You can say whatever, yes, there are other layers to everything, political, economical, everything, of course, absolutely. But the bottom line in the Middle East is religion. Even in the conflict that was internally within Israel, a second before this outbreak, what were they fighting about? They were fighting about the judicial reform, right? But the judicial reform at its base was about religion. The people who demonstrated on both sides in the Jewish people, there were religious versus secular in broad strokes, but this is really what the idea is. So in the Middle East, the religious convictions are all there. It's just a matter of what religious conviction you hold. And even the secular Jews or secular Muslim or secular Christian in the Middle East still hold a religious conviction against that. So really to start understanding, it's religious. Just like in America, whoever said that, I don't agree with it. It said it's the economy, right? I don't, as a human being with a soul, I don't think that at the end of the day, any society is about economy. It really is about the values that we hold. So the challenge now to move, I'm going to go further with the title I gave it, Rabbinic Mission. And that is the most important part of this. Because as rabbis, we have to be compassionate. We have to be compassionate. That really is the bottom line of everything. Is to make the whole Bible is a conduit for us to come out on the other side as more compassionate. So of course, a situation like this is horrible and terrible. As a kid, we used to shop in Gaza. My father was in construction. We lived with Arabic. My parents walked for a year from Yemen as children to go to Israel. They left everything behind. So we were all displaced. At the same time, around 1948, when 750,000 Arabs were displaced, nearly 1 million Jews from Arab countries were displaced. I just wrote my final paper at Columbia about this, about the forgotten refugees that we have on our side. What happened in America is that when Jews came to America after being persecuted for thousands of years for not being white enough in Europe, when they came to America, where the paradigm was black or white, this is like heaven on earth. Especially when they don't have to even ask for citizenship. They came with everybody. Washington already said, you are our brothers and sisters. That was 10 years before the French Revolution. That gave citizenship, period, the first time. So America was that place where Jews finally felt that it's not Israel, it's not Zion, but it is the golden Medina. It is the golden place to go to. The problem with this was that now the perception in America, which is really the most important public opinion for different reasons, first of all, because half of the Jewish people live here now, and half in Israel, basically. These are the two centers of Judaism. There are 2 other million Jews that live around the world, but about 7 million and 7 million Jews live Israel and here. So these are the most important places to have these conversations. So when Jews in America became white, we all became white. The whole Jewish people became white. And therefore, people today on Columbia campus can say to me that I'm not indigenous, that I'm a conqueror, that I'm a colonizer. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. My family never left the Middle East before my mother came to study here in the 60s. And when I came here later on, I'm as indigenous as anybody else. And that's the point. So the idea of changing the public perception of what was going on in Israel is the most important thing. I'll tell you why. And it didn't bother me until now. But when you see that the rhetoric that people hold here inflames the anger everywhere, and in that equation, the Jews are the white colonizers, and of course you can redeem your land with any means possible. And that's what they write. Excuse me. If nothing else, we share the land. And let's figure out how to share the land. And a massacre like this has no room in any land. Any land. And the premise that I also had created an event on Columbia campus on November 30th. It's the day to commemorate the departure and expulsion of Jews from Arab countries and Iran. It was set to be on November 30th. Nobody really commemorates it, but we will start. Because it was November 30th is the day after November 29th, 1947, when the UN declared the partition plan. So we both have room in this land. And even European Jews that came to live in Israel, they're indigenous. They've been in this land for 4,000 years. They've been expelled, they've been coming back. They were praying for the land. They were always connected to that land. And that's very, very important. So the mission to Israel is challenging because on the one hand, we need to be compassionate. And what's going on in Gaza now is horrible. And we were standing in Kfar Aza, one of the kibbutzim, that were massacred the most. And you see a whole neighborhood of the kibbutz burnt. Of course, when we were there were no, it was already cleaned up, as much as possible. But you can tell. You're going through, the only experience that I had before that was when I went to the concentration camp in Poland. That was the feeling that I had. These people were massacred. They had no help, which should be checked. Somebody's going to have to answer that. But the point is, think about it. These people, especially those who lived near the Gaza border, the Gaza envelope, were peaceniks. They were the ones who helped the Gazans come in and out of Israel and take the hospitals and that. And now they don't know what to do. They're not even living there anymore. They left. Israel has shrunk. All the people in the north and all the people in the south moved to the center, which is not safe either because the rockets keep coming. So after all this Jewish history, we have to come to the Holy Land as rabbis and say, okay, we have to be compassionate, but yet we have to split our compassion. So I'll stop here with that because I think this is where the best I can bring you with the Gaza-Israel feeling. And I will concentrate on what we've gone through when going through the Gaza envelope. So first of all, my nephews are fighting in Gaza as we speak. So there's no one in Israel that wants this and there's any interest in having it. So when we go through this, the only thing that I can think about is that thank God that I'm with another 24 rabbis, because I don't know how I could have handled this. To be a pastor for somebody else at this point, or to have a group with me, that would have been impossible. So that was the idea. I think for me the strongest impression of going to Israel this time was two things. One on the horrific side and one on the light side. The horrific side is that on every major intersection in Israel now, there are those big posters of the kidnapped. I left Israel in 1995. I moved to New York in May, and Rabbi was assassinated in November. But I remember when I finished my army service, which was very rewarding, but it was time for me to explore other things. And I remember that it was so toxic. And on every major intersection was Rabbi with his either SS uniform or Arafat's keffiyeh, whatever it is. And it was impossible. Now it's impossible, but sort of on the other side of it. Because just before this happened, Israel was the most divided ever. And I think the culmination of all that, or the most conflicted event was on Yom Kippur, when Jews interfered other Jews to pray publicly. I never thought I would hear that. Because really, Yom Kippur in Israel, they've never experienced it. It's like nothing else in the world. The whole country shuts down. No cars on the street. Some cars, but mainly just emergency cars. It's amazing. And that sanctuary was violated. And as a religious person too, I would say, okay, if you fight yourself like this, like a body that fights itself, it weakens its own defense mechanism, right? Defense system. Then you become sick. Your body's attacked. So this would have to be dealt with, of course. But after the minute of this disunity came this extraordinary moment of unity. And everywhere else, along with the posters of the kidnapped, there's a slogan, a big slogan. Beyachad nenatzeh. Together we will win. And this is what I want to end my speech today, about the togetherness. And who are the togetherness? Because I absolutely believe, as a rabbi that does interfaith, of course, that it's only together. It's not enough to be Jewish today, it's not enough to be Christian, it's not enough to be Muslim, it's not enough to be anything. Together, and I'm going to be a Shelian here, who was, of course, a mystic, and it said that at the end of days, the Messiah will come either when it's all terrible or all good. So I know it's not all good. So by elimination, we can say this is pretty bad. But we have to remember that just before light is very dark before, And just like what happened in Israel, unfortunately, it happened through this horrible, horrific reminder. But that we must be together. It's not an option. Not an option. Those people, and this is the other vision that I saw in Israel that is messianic. Those people who were at each other's throat a second ago, whether they were Hasidic or secular, there are many divisions in Israel, but that's also the beauty, the pluralism. They were at each other's throat, and now the slogan is we're all together. But I would expand that because it's not enough for Israelis to be together. The conversation in the Jewish world changed this time. Unbelievable. No longer, after 75 years of Israel's existence as a political entity, and it's 3,000 years of 3,500 years of existence, ancient existence, there were always Jews who lived outside the land and Jews who lived in the land. When the 12 tribes, when the Israelites left Egypt, but now, after all that, the conversation has changed. And whether we agree with each other or not, as Jews, we're now speaking as the Jewish world. Jews. It doesn't matter where you live. In Israel, America, Morocco, it doesn't matter. We're Jewish. So that's another sign of unity. The third sign of unity is with our interfaith colleagues. I've done several events with my colleagues from the Abrahamic Reunion from Israel, the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And my friend Sheikh Hassan Ben Asra is going to come again. And this is the other side of it. Yes, we will fight this evil force that exists in this world. The fact that it's penetrated through Gaza, that's almost irrelevant, because if that kind of force exists in the world, it has to be eradicated. And that's where the rest of the togetherness has to come. We will not stop with interfaith work. On the contrary, we'll increase that. Because for people that want to talk, there's a ton to talk about and to do, and to figure out how to share the Holy Land. Absolutely. But those who we cannot speak to anymore, there is such a thing as conversation is over. And at this point, I don't think any rehabilitation of those who raped, maimed, butchered, and burnt alive people could be rehabilitated. I want to read a couple of things from Heschel before we conclude. It says, as Abram Joshua Heschel in God in Search of Man, religion is an answer to man's ultimate questions. The moment we become oblivious to ultimate questions, religion becomes irrelevant, and its crisis sets in. The primary task of philosophy of religion is to rediscover the questions of which religion is an answer. The iniquity must proceed both by delving into the consciousness of man as well as by delving into the teachings and attitudes of the religious tradition. This conflict will only be resolved by religious conversation. The problem is that politicians stay away from religion. And who else stays away from religion? And this is the force that we all have to stand against, is those who benefit from war. Those who sell the weapons to both sides, those who are cynical to think this is a game. And that game is a world game. It doesn't matter where we are. And it's important that you invited me and that I speak the truth to you, my truth, and based on experience. that we don't shy away from these conversations, because then we become irrelevant and it doesn't matter. If nobody shows up, then it doesn't matter. So I'm going to take my activism and Heschel's activism together, and I would say we all have to pray with our feet, and we have to go to where things happen and to talk about them. We may get hurt in the process, but we have to do this together.